I get it. Yeah.
24 was a year of instability, a year of extremes. It's set to be the hottest year on record. The challenge feels huge, yet solutions exist. Across cities, regions, businesses, schools, and community organizations the world over, bold climate action is underway in big and small but significant ways. Leaders of all kinds are stepping up and rising to the challenge. There's a groundswell of momentum. Climate action is possible, popular, and profitable. Thanks to the collaboration of organizations across the world, we know what is needed to tackle the climate crisis at speed and scale across oceans, regions, and industries. We now know where we need to go next, together, to build a healthy, resilient, prosperous, peaceful world for all of us and our children, to reach our clear collective climate goals by 2030. So, whoever you are, wherever you're from, find out more about the partners and impact makers ready to collaborate and the tools already available to build ambitious national plans and take bold climate action today. Because tomorrow is too late.
Implementation Lab, which will be focused on climate technology and innovation for resilience building in the global south. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you all. My name is Raylene Martin. I'm the head of sustainability at the International Chamber of Commerce, and I'm delighted to co-organize this session with Green Growth Africa. Just to start with some introductory remarks before we dive straight in, we really are at a critical juncture in our collective efforts to confront the climate crisis. While climate change is a global challenge, its impacts are often felt more acutely in the global south. In these regions, the stakes are high. Communities are witnessing more frequent and severe weather events, rising sea levels, shifting agricultural patterns, and diminishing natural resources. But amidst these challenges lies an incredible opportunity: the chance to harness technology and innovation as powerful tools for resilience. Today, we will explore how climate technologies, whether through renewable energy, climate smart agriculture, water management solutions, or early warning systems, can help build adaptive capacity and reduce the risks faced by vulnerable communities. Innovation in its many forms holds the promise of leapfrogging traditional resource intensive systems and creating more sustainable, equitable, and resilient communities. But innovation alone is not enough. We must also ensure that these technologies are inclusive, equitable, and adaptable to local needs. Resilience building is not just about surviving the next crisis. It's about ensuring that all communities, especially the most marginalized, have the tools, knowledge, and capacity to thrive in a changing world. The World Economic Forum estimates that climate adaptation could be worth $2 trillion annually by 2026. However, to unlock such potential, we need to solve critical capital gaps and focus on creating enabling environments for innovation. While there are about 20 active investors in climate tech in Africa, private sector financing for adaptation remains a mere 14% of global climate flows, with only 1 billion a year going toward early stage innovations. Africa can lead climate innovation. However, the gap in climate investment flows need tackling. Between 2000 and 2019, the 10 countries most affected by climate change, 8 of which are in Africa, received a meager 2% of total climate finance. 277 billion is required annually to meet Africa's nationally determined contributions and 2030 climate goals, implying an annual shortfall of nearly 40 billion in adaptation financing alone. In today's session, we'll be examining real efforts in innovation and technology within businesses and SMEs, real cases of SMEs and businesses recruiting technology to serve the purpose of resilience building across various areas of the 2030 climate solutions. The objectives of our discussion will be firstly to identify and address key barriers, showcase forward-looking solutions, tracking progress and ensuring accountability, and facilitating multi-stakeholder collaboration. I very much look forward to our discussions and to exploring how we can all play a role in building a more resilient, sustainable, and just future for the global South. One that is powered by innovation, guided by equity, and rooted in the lived experience of the communities most impacted by climate change. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Mrs. Frances Way, Executive Director from the Climate Champions team, who will share perspectives on the role of young African voices and entrepreneurs and her SME campaign, as well as the importance of climate technology in moving the needle. Over to you, Frances.
Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the UN Climate Change High-Level Champions, Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak for COP28 and Nigar Alpadare for COP29. Today is Science, Technology, Innovation and Digitalization Day, and for the High-Level Champions and the Marrakech Partnership, it's Industry Day. And earlier today, Nigar hosted a signature event for the Climate Proofing SMEs campaign. It brings together more than 40 collaborator organizations and leaders working to empower small and medium enterprises as critical players in the green transition. To date, the campaign reaches almost 90 million SMEs in more than 100 countries, and almost 9,000 SMEs are taking ambitious action as members of the Race to Zero through the SME Climate Hub. I'm very excited to be part of this session, where we'll be hearing directly from entrepreneurs, joining from Brazil, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania. The African continent's home to many startups working on energy, water, sanitation, agriculture, food systems, electric vehicles, and climate data solutions. The rich biodiversity, vast renewable energy potential, and growing pool of skilled talent is creating a fertile ground for climate innovation. While there's a gap in climate investment flows, according to Africa, the Big Deal, between 2019 and 2023, climate tech innovation raised $3.4 billion, with the annual total nearly tripling over that time. During the first 6 months of 2024, climate tech represented 325 million, 45%, of total venture capital funding deployed on the continent, matching the 2019 total in just 6 months. According to the Climate Policy Initiative, blended finance is crucial for managing risks and uncertainties related to emerging technologies and markets. While still relatively underutilized, innovative uses of concessional capital in blended structures can attract more private sector investment and fuel the growth of climate solutions In addition, local capital markets need further development to boost the prospects of scale and exit paths for new climate ventures. Investor interest is focused on energy and water to date. However, there are further opportunities to improve climate resilience by increasing agricultural production, improving environmental services, and reducing vulnerability to extreme weather events. Policymakers have the opportunity to create enabling environments for young climate entrepreneurs across the continent. While countries such as Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa have relatively mature startup ecosystems, other African countries need to catch up. One of the ways we can support the growth of climate tech and attract greater investment is by developing global connections with climate tech communities around the world to share opportunities, expertise, resources, and infrastructure. We're therefore excited about the Earthshot Prize launching a new climate innovation network with Imperial College London, with 17 initial members operating on 5 continents, including Hub Accra, Kinjani, and 91, who all operate in Africa. The aim is to foster collaboration between accelerators, incubators, and other organizations supporting climate innovation around the world, aiming to help a wide range of climate startups tackle the world's most pressing environmental challenges. The new program aims to scale up 10,000 eco-innovators this decade. Investing in climate innovation in Africa and the Global South not only addresses urgent needs related to adaptation resilience, but potential substantial returns for investors. The World Economic Forum estimates that climate adaptation could be worth $2 trillion annually by 2026. However, to unlock such potential, we need to solve critical capital gaps and focus on creating enabling environments for innovation. By unlocking more private sector capital for these innovators, diversifying the capital mix available to entrepreneurs via multiple funding instruments, leveraging pools of concessional capital in innovative ways to de-risk new climate fund structures, and by creating favorable policies that support entrepreneurs throughout their journeys, we can enhance Africa's resilience to climate change and position the continent as a global leader in climate action.
Thank you very much, Francis. Thank you very much, Francis, for those very insightful perspectives and very exciting to hear about what's already being done. And thank you for setting the scene for the rest of our discussion. So I would like to now introduce Naira Hattem from the Race to Zero Connector of the Africa team for the Climate Champions team to start our first segment. Over to you, Naira.
Thank you so much. And I'm very excited to kick off this session. In this session, we will be having entrepreneurs who are working on ground on real innovative solutions on climate, in the climate space. But maybe before I start introducing them, I just want to mention that yesterday during the Resilience Implementation Lab, it was focusing primarily on data. Our previous high-level champion, he mentioned, and I think this term, I will be using it moving forward, the DFI, which is the importance of having data, finance, effective implementation in order for the adaptation and resilience efforts to be put in place in the Global South. So we're not focusing only on Africa today, but we're also having speakers from Latin America and the Caribbean that we're very excited for them to join us. So maybe I can start first by introducing my colleague, Alan, from the Green Growth Africa. They are working on a program called the Young Africa Innovates, and he will be telling us more about it. Alan, over to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Amwakujedu from Ghana, and we are working on a project, like Naira has mentioned, called the Young Africa Innovate. We are working with UNDP as lead and with funding from Mastercard Foundation. For us at Green Growth Africa, we believe that Africans are capable. So we believe in giving Africans the opportunity to bring solutions to the climate crisis that we face, especially in Africa. Green Growth Africa facilitates socioeconomic, environmental, and technological development, particularly amongst urban, peri-urban, and then poor communities in Africa. And on this project, what we are doing is to scout for young innovators in rural areas, atypical innovators who are finding solutions to the climate crisis we face. Then we give them opportunities to test their ideas, give them opportunities to develop them, and then also scale them to be able to increase the solutions to reach wider audience. Before I go into the presentation, I just want to give you some facts that helped in designing the project for us. What you see here is facts that affected the design of the project. When you come to Ghana, currently our population sits around 34.4 million. And out of the 34.4 million, over 50% are youth or are young people, with 36% between the ages of 30 and then 14. For us in Africa, this statistics is very worrying, and it points at something. And sorry, let me go back. For us in Africa, this statistics points at the potential of the African youth, because if more than 50% of the population is below 30, then it means that there's a lot of potential for that kind of population, because we know with youth comes passion, with youth comes dedication, and with youth comes drive. So that is one of the ideologies behind this Young Africa Innovates project, to give power to the youth, to empower the youth, to bring about solutions. In our studies, we gathered that out of the over 50% of the population that is youthful, only 7% were involved in climate innovation. For us, that's very worrying, because if out of over 50 people and only 7% is involved in climate innovation, it means that there's a lot that needs to be done on the continent and then in the country as Ghana. So that is how come the Young Africa Innovate project came about, with leadership from UNDP and sponsorship from MasterCard Foundation. What we do is we scout to the remotest of areas. We look for young people who are doing innovative stuff but have little attention. That is really the focus. We are not looking for innovators from the likes of Silicon Valley and those big kind of innovators. We are looking for innovators who are finding their own local solutions to the challenges they face. Some of these innovators are, like has already been shared, using solar to power agriculture, that's irrigation farming and what have you. Can you bring the slide up for me, please? Okay. So what we do as part of this project is to organize boot camps and trainings. After scouting for these young innovators in remote areas, we organize boot camps for them. Then through the boot camps, they go through something we call stage gates. So the project has been structured into stage gate 1, stage gate 2, stage gate 3. Depending on the level they are at, we give them funding ranging from $5,000 to $100,000 to try their ideas, to test them and make them market ready. And for me, where I come from, $100,000 is a lot of money for young innovators, because most of these people are in very rural areas. They lack education. Some of them have not even set foot in classrooms. Some of them cannot speak English, but they are finding their own innovative ways to the climate crisis that we face. And for us, that is very innovative. So they go through the boot camps, we give them the grants, and we tailor their solutions to ensure they are scientifically proven, they are relevant enough for the challenges that we face. And that is what we've been doing over the past year. As we talk about climate change, I want to emphasize that in Ghana, where we come from, the subject of climate change is very big. We are big on climate change because you'll find that climate change affects the vulnerable groups in Ghana, vulnerable communities. What climate change does is to identify the needs of the community and find a skillful way of depriving the community of the very things they need. So you find communities that need just water for healthcare, water for agriculture, water for food. Then climate change will present to them drought. Will present to them drought that is causing famine, drought that is causing malnutrition, drought that is just impoverishing the communities. You find another community that has some bit of water, but they just need some little sunshine. Then climate change presents to them flooding. Flooding that is affecting their livelihoods, flooding that is destroying infrastructure, destroying their homes and what have you. And for these communities, it is very important to mention that the loss and damage they face is not just the infrastructure or the livelihoods they have affected, but the non-economic losses that they face as a result of the climate impacts that they are exposed to. Some of these areas that experience flooding used to be the dwelling place of gods, the gods of the land. They believe those places housed their ancestral heritage. They believe those places had gods that they have affinities to. So if there's loss and damage in areas like that, it goes deep down, aside infrastructure or aside things we can see. For them, if you provide any form of risk settlements to them, you've done good to them, but the impact is deeper because they are non-economic. I wouldn't want to talk much. I just want to highlight a few things about the project we are doing in Ghana and the focus we have on this project. So these are some of the people we've impacted with the project. The project keenly focuses on vulnerable people, keenly focused on atypical people, people who are in remote areas, people who do not have access to education, people who do not have access to technology. Some of these people do not even have digital phones to access the internet, but they are finding innovative ways of responding to the climate crisis that we face. There are a number of things I wanted to share, but because of time, I didn't want to talk much. These are just a few highlights of some of the people we are working with. And this is just a partner appreciation to some of the stakeholders we are working with the leadership of UNDP and sponsorship from the MasterCard Foundation. I'll leave it here for my other panelists to continue. I'm sure after there are some other innovators who will touch on some other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Very, very inspiring. And you mentioned that you're working with young innovators. And actually, one of the campaigns that our high-level champion, Ms. Nagar, launched was the Impact Makers, which focuses on individual efforts. And we have an impact maker with us, Ms. Mariam, that I will start with you. She's an entrepreneur. She's the CEO of the ITIS, which is the Impact Technology Innovation Sustainability for Development. You work primarily with girls and women. You encourage them to take the STEM education. You pave the way for them for the climate education and technology. Please, if you can share with us more about this work and what you've learned so far from those women and girls. Over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Naira. Hello, everybody. I am Mariam Bello, and I'm the Executive Director of ITs for Development, which is an abbreviation for Impact, Technology, Innovation, and Sustainability. So before I even proceed to your question, I remember Alan mentioning that a lot of we have very few startup founders who are focused on environmental sustainability. So personally, I didn't know about climate change. I didn't even learn about it in school. I never heard the word climate change. I was just lucky to be led by curiosity to discover that this is a prevalent challenge that is affecting Africans. And so my question was, why don't we know about it if we are the ones suffering the most from climate change? And that was the reason why we started ITs for Development. And so when we started, we went to schools. I started with young girls and boys as well. And so what we did was to talk about climate change in a way that resonates with them, leveraging the youth demand research that was presented by UNESCO at COP27, which demanded a learner-centered, action-oriented, and engaging curriculum for youths. And so when we went there, we started with primary schools, and that my reason for starting was because I wanted to give back to my community. That was the school I went to. And so when I went there, the beautiful thing I learned was these young minds are very curious. All you just need is to create a problem-solving mindset in them or instill it in them. And so when we started with training them about climate change, letting them know how it resonates with their personal lives, I was shocked to see that they wanted to learn more. So the next thing I had in mind was empowerment. If you talk about climate change and you talk about climate action, if you do not empower these young people, they do not know what to do. And so we taught them how to leverage technology, right, to solve this problem. And we had young girls under the age of 18 develop mobile applications to solve climate change, such as they actually made research themselves to discover challenges like mental health challenge that affects women in climate change, and they developed mobile applications leveraging AI and so much more. And so when we did this, we realized that a lot of young people are curious enough, and all they just need is the problem-solving mindset. And so we then integrated the business aspect of it, which is climate entrepreneurship for me, because speaking from an African perspective, entrepreneurship is the future for us. And it is very important that we know how to integrate environmental sustainability in our businesses, even if it may not obviously seem like it is climate related. And so they learn how to develop business plans. And with that, those business plans, some of them are currently implementing these solutions as startups. And then one of the things, I considered, because it was also a learning process for me, and I realized that when you trying to empower people, when you talk about climate action and when you talk about entrepreneurship and technology, it boils down to that they need to understand how this relates to what they do. And then it relates to empowerment. So in terms of empowerment, for me, it was technology, it was robotics, it was AI. This was one of the things that we prioritized. And then the next thing was entrepreneurship, because everything boils down to implementation. So for me, the best thing I learned was they can't do it. All they just need is someone to guide them. And this is what we've been doing for the past 3 years, and we're making progress, and we've made traction with our students being recognized as winners for so many innovations. They are making profits, but they're also implementing sustainability. So generally, I would say, I've mentioned what I've learned. I would just say, if you're talking about entrepreneurship, you're talking about climate action, how you teach them about climate change matters a lot. So climate education is very key. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mariam. I think my key takeaway is empowerment. Next, I think we have Ms. Zanali. She's from Bambili in South Africa. She's an expert in renewables and hydrogen energy solution. Ms. Zanali, thank you so much for joining us. If you can tell us more about the hydrogen solutions that you're providing for your customers.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me this afternoon. In South Africa, we've adopted a hydrogen economy that we're trying to implement. My company specifically is focused on the downstream, so not the manufacturing of the hydrogen, but really on the downstream. On how do you then use the hydrogen within the economy? We're very proud of the fact in South Africa we have developed world-class IP and technology that we make a key component that goes into electrolyzers, which are used to make hydrogen, flow batteries that are used for storage, and fuel cell systems that provide electricity. And so currently we are manufacturing this key component and exporting it to the European market, and we're looking to scale that up. But at the same time, we're not only focused on exports, we're also very focused on how do you create industry in South Africa itself. And so we're doing pioneering work with partners to build ecosystems and making sure at the same time that we are addressing the just component of this new industry. And what I'm most passionate about is youth unemployment, which in my country is very high. And so this new industry allows us to create not just a manufacturing base, but also to develop human capital. And we are training youth in technical skills so that the very same products that we are manufacturing can be maintained by them as we deploy them into the field. And so our products will be then used in the South African market for fuel cell heavy duty vehicles. And that means basically trucks and buses in South Africa, which we hope to deploy into the market in the next 2 years. The other is to use fuel cells to decarbonize power for buildings. So in essence, looking initially at using them for backup power by replacing diesel generators with fuel cell power systems. So those are the markets we're involved in. At the same time, we're trying to make sure that we think about a just component and making sure that we grow the society so that the society is vested. And at the same time, provide products that are world-class that we can export to various markets. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think my key takeaway is human capital and youth empowerment. Third, we have Geoffrey from Mazu Hub. You work with farmers, you have a data-driven approach, and you've been working on AI and in agriculture. If you can tell us more, how do you think, or what do you think about protection of the intellectual property on when it comes to data innovation and adaptation and resilience?
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like you to tell you what exactly we are doing so that we'll be able to understand on how we're implementing intellectual property to how we in implementing our AI tools. First of all, Mazao Hub, we blend technology and touch. whereby we blend artificial intelligence, software, soil kits, and we collect the data, analyze this data. But to rural farmers, having all these advanced technology, it doesn't help. And they don't expect that they are going to adopt. So what we do, we establish agricultural clinics to where they are located. These agricultural clinics are like distribution centers whereby we distribute our AI tools. So a farmer can go to the clinic just like how they go to the hospital for soil testing, for agronomy support, for on-ground support to the field data collection and everything. So we collect all these data, analyze them, recommend the farmer, support the farmer, all the way of farming from the land preparation to harvesting up to the market, post-harvest, handling, etc. And I've done that with more than 60,000 farmers in a sense that you can click into the system and see what is happening in real time to each individual farmers. So this is what we have been able to do for the rural farmers. We know the challenge that farmers are facing. We know because we came from the farming background. My grandmother was a rural farmer and I was also a smallholder farmer. So I know the pain, so which is why I know Africa. I know the painful challenge that farmers are facing. So let us talk about the intellectual property. If I tell you that most of these innovations, most of these solutions, which many of farmers buy and they pay high price, and they are very well packaged, and the farmers buy at a very expensive price. What if I tell you that these solutions are known to farmers, are just branded, are known to farmers, are like, are traditional. Some of them are traditional. And so it happened that some people come to Africa and then they go and go deeper and understand this traditional knowledge. You know, Africa continent is very deep when it comes to traditional knowledge, very deep with ancient knowledge. But the challenge with this knowledge that we have, sometimes maybe I normally say that we take for granted of the blessing that we have. So some people, when they come to Africa, they see, this is wonderful knowledge. This is wonderful information. They collect those information and they go back and they build the technology solutions, which they package them and they go back and they sell it at high price. And the farmers are paying high price. And this is what I see for Africans. We have to wake up to come with a solution ourselves to own our data. So having these AI tools, having Mazao Abu tools, so we collect this data, African data, soil data, climate data at the village level, at individual farm level. And with this data, we put into our system, working closely with the government. These data have to be owned by farmers in the sense that for the generation to come, even those who want to come and do the farming, they can just access those information, those data, and improve their productivity. And we have done that so far at the moment. I can tell you, I'll give you my experience as an example. In Africa, for example, Tanzania, where I come from, you'll find that someone goes to the field and he knows that the ratio of applying maybe fertilizer maybe is 20 bags. So they just go and apply 20 bags in the land. While in reality, it's not 20 bags. Maybe that farmer need only 2 bags, and the other maybe regenerative practices or maybe regenerative activities for the farmer to be able to improve the soil and have more productivity. And I've seen that to so many farmers, some of them, they kept believing witchcraft of maybe why am I not getting more productivity, while the reality is the soil, or maybe the challenge is lime. So having this solution, this data into the tool and have the farmer access them through their mobile app, or even if they don't have mobile app, with extension officers who are there supervising them through our agricultural clinic, we have been able to reduce the cost of the production for farmers who are using our platform, especially on the fertilizer, herbicides, by 30%. We have been able to increase organic manure usage by 500% with these farmers. And these data are accessible. These data belongs to the farmers. So each data we collect belongs to farmers with their own account, with their own information there. So this is what I see, that if we wanted to have to protect intellectual property, we have to be there to build the solutions specifically for Africans, collect data specifically for Africans, and do it in the field with the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And from Africa data-driven approach and from agriculture in Africa, we go to agriculture in Latin America. So I have Leo. He is the chief. Sorry. Yes, he is the Chief Global Strategy in Solitech. Leo, please, if you can tell us, so your program primarily works on reducing the costs, improving the yield production, and basically it's an agricultural tech company in Brazil. If you can tell us more how your program or how you think robotics in agriculture can transform economies. Leo, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Pleasure to be here and to share the knowledge about our company. Well, our company is a Brazilian company, but is present in more than 12 countries. And we like to work together with farmers. As Jeffrey is mentioned about the Africa, we start our technology building together with farms. This situation happens in Brazil, US, Canada, Colombia, and all the countries that decide to put our technology to works. We know that the past 100 years, we did not create too much opportunity for farmers to be more sustainable and profitable at the same time. We know that it's easy to ask for farmers to change their practice, but we don't provide for them a new opportunity to be more efficient and profitable at the same time. And here, what you guys are seeing in the video, it is one robot that you launched 3 years ago that give a farmer this opportunity. It is autonomous robots that run in the field 24 per 7 days, running powered by batteries and the solar panels, and avoid the soil compaction, eliminates more than 90% of the insects in the fields. We know that in Africa, we have many countries that lost 35% of the yield because of the insects. So this kind of technology, it is a new opportunity for farmer. We can reduce 95% of the herbicide. And these blue lights that you guys are seeing, it is a frequency of the light that you can attract the insects and kill with electrical shocks. In this case, we eliminate the use of the pesticides. So it is a technology working together with the farmer. We are providing them one technology chip and that they can use in the simple way. I know that the educational for farmer, it is hard part when you start to provide the technology. We know that the cost, it is one huge barrier, as Jeffrey mentioned, but that is the idea. Provide them one technology that the farmer, the small one, the big one can pay in the first season. We know that the size of the fields in around the world, it is around 20, 25 acres. That is what our math do. We create this technology to pay himself in the first year. So we know that we are all here discussing about the climate change, but you cannot close our eyes for the food security. So if you need to change our mind, for sure we need to produce more foods, and at the same time we need to help the environment. We all the time we like to say that the farmers are a bad guy because they are using the soil, because they are using inputs, but everybody here needs to eat. So I believe this kind of initiatives about the private company and with some public initiatives can make the world better. And as a technology company, a representative here, I'd like to say that it's possible to make the agriculture more sustainable and efficient. Thank Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leo. I also thank all my climate entrepreneurs. I'm very happy to introduce our second segment. Ms. Shamila is our moderator for the second segment. She's the CEO of the MBI, which is the National Business Initiative in South Africa. She is a sustainable expert, and she's passionate primarily on working on systematic approach of integrating sustainability in corporate strategy. Ms. Shamila, over to you.
Thank you, Naira, and good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to have a wonderful panel this afternoon, but I'm sure we're going to take the not so exciting topic of regulatory reforms, but you're going to hear a different take on it. Thank you. Okay.
The mic.
Okay. It's not. Okay. Sorry, I will try to lean in here. Okay, so thank you. So we know that policymakers have the opportunity to foster more favorable and enabling environments for young climate entrepreneurs across the continent. I think we've heard already clearly the case for the innovation, the enthusiasm is there, the opportunities are there, but what can we do from a policy perspective to try to make that more favorable? I'm going to hand over now, firstly, on my right, to Mr. Nathan Agriwe-Analem, who is going to talk to us a little bit about what he's seen in his work. And he's, of course, the program manager at the Youth Opportunity and Transformation in Africa organization. So Nathan, from your work with national governments, what is needed from policymakers and government representatives in order to make climate technology and adaptation efforts more convenient for entrepreneurs?
Thank you very much, and for the opportunity to speak here. I think with a lot of the work that we do at Youth Opportunity and Transformation in Africa is working with governments and stakeholders to be able to make sure that the policies that are designed work effectively for the people that they affect. It's all very interesting when we all talk about policy because we all want policies to be curated. The problem about policy is whether it actually gets implemented. And that's, for me, is one of the biggest bottlenecks when we talk about policies and how we are implementing them. We have very nice policies crafted. They're sitting in government spaces. They're sitting among stakeholders, but they're actually not getting delivered the way they should be. So, for example, if you talk about where I come from, which is Ghana, we have a number of solid policies around climate. One of them is the National Climate Change Act, which is supposed to support and create that enabling environment for businesses to thrive, to promote climate safe, climate justice, climate smart interventions. But the challenge is how these are really implemented and are used in the communities that they affect. So for me, that's just one policy. We recently are having a policy, an emerging program that talks about the Climate Innovation Center, where young people, young entrepreneurs, nice ideas about climate justice, climate sensitive approaches are being curated. But when we actually come to delivering them, there we find the problems. So I think one of the big things that we look at is the fact that a lot of these climate policies, a lot of these policies that we design are not inclusive enough. And when we talk about inclusivity, we're looking at the various spectrum of communities and who gets affected by what and who can actually tap into this and design some solutions. You're talking about gender-based inclusion approaches. You're looking at indigenous communities coming on board to be able to provide solutions. You're also looking at the fact that even people living with disabilities, whether we're able to bring them on board to be able to make take part in these conversations. We're looking at how climate mechanisms, whether they are fit for purpose, how enhanced are they, and whether they are actually fit for purpose, because over time, a lot of these policy directives that we make become very obsolete and are no longer, useful for the purpose that we are working with them in. I always say that when we're working with governments and discussing policy, we should allow young entrepreneurs, to fail forward. It's okay for people to fail. I always say this, but allow them to fail forward. And these policies that we draft do not become a test of whether young people are sustainable or not, but allow people to fail forward. Because in this room, if we were going to point forward how we've become where we are right now, a lot of us will point on the failures that we've had. But a lot of these interventions are designed in such a way that if you received some financing to do some work and it didn't go well, you're most likely not to get the next grant, right? So there's no learning in there. Young people become, they lose their confidence. They don't want to try anymore, and they They abandon their dreams about climate entrepreneurship and go back into the offices and sit down, and all these ideas are killed because they're not allowed to fail forward. The other thing we're talking about is capacity building. How can we do this in the most adaptive way, right? Recognizing the changing needs. Climate change conversations evolve over time, but a lot of these policies that sit there are being interpreted in a certain government of the day's idea, how they want it to run. If they're in power for 8 or 10 years, they want it to run in a similar way. But there's a need for these changes or capacity building programs to transmit differently. And then finally, I would like to say that there is also the need for us to look at how we can use useful experiential learning. It's also very important that young people get the opportunity to learn from their peers. What is working in other locations can be transferred in other parts of the world for them to be really successful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nathan. Really insightful. Insightful and practical, helpful there. So I've just listened to a lot on the implementation and where that falls apart, the capacity that's required, and then, of course, the experiential learning. So seems like we can't have enough of that, right? Sharing experience. I want to now move to Ms. Raquel Moses, who's the CEO of the Caribbean Climate Smart Accelerator. Now, Raquel, it sounds like a place I want to be. But please, could you take us through some of your experience now, having worked with, I suppose, a number of smaller enterprises and with youth, on how can we build the needed capacity to support climate tech for resilience building and innovation for local communities? And then within that as well, how does your accelerator support small businesses? So we've given you a big brief for 5 minutes, but thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so happy to be here. So I'm only going to tell you 4 things, right? What we've done, what we're doing now, what we need to make that really effective, and what needs to change. So the first thing is what we are meant to do. We're a coalition of 29 countries that are bringing new sources of funds to projects across our region so that we build our climate resilience and build and future-proof our entrepreneurship and our existence as one of the most climate vulnerable regions. And so what we used to do was have investor forums where we would matchmake, entrepreneurs with sources of funding and get them to pitch to investors. It did not work. And the investors were always absolutely enamored with the solutions that they saw. They heard some really innovative things like we've heard today, but they said each and every time these projects are not ready. And so what we discovered is this, that there is a space of funding that is required that can help to prepare the projects so that they're ready for commercial funding. And that's not available in our market. We don't have a venture capital market. We don't have an equity market. And what that means is that the projects have these great concepts that are fledgling, but that they fail before they have the opportunity to accept commercial funding. So we decided we would close that gap. So that's what we're doing now. We have what's called an innovation fund, where we bring entrepreneurs who are almost ready, and then we infuse some capital to help them to get to the point of commercial readiness. So it means that we may provide what's called tipping point support. Let's say a funder wants to fund them, but they don't have an audit, and we need to pay for the audit to make sure that they can get funded. Or they need several years of operation, so we help fund them through the years of operation so that they can get funded. Or there's imminent access to funding, but they just need a co-funder, and so we serve as that co-funder to help close that gap. And what we need to make that happen is philanthropy. This is a space that only philanthropy can fill. And that's what we're trying to do, bring together a group of funders. And we have collected some, but we're all looking for many, many more. We are underserved in terms of philanthropy in our region per capita, and we're already a small region. So if we can get more philanthropists to come to the table, we can fund more of these entrepreneurs with great solutions like replanting coral, taking plastic waste from the ocean and making furniture, turning conservation into an eco tourism opportunity. And we're seeing all of these really innovative things that could be brilliant if they were just allowed to come to fruition. And what needs to change? So what we're noticing is, and we subscribe to insights about philanthropy. What we're noticing is this, that the people who get money always get money. because they are well resourced to get the money. And philanthropists need to start looking through a different lens for distributing philanthropy. Is this a first time request? Is this an underfunded entity? Is this an underrepresented group? And weigh those more heavily than the ones who always get the money, because we're building upon the inequality of the past and creating inequality in the future. And we have to do things differently if we don't expect to circle and come back to where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. Super, super clear there. But it also sounds like we perhaps need to have a conversation with the philanthropies around how they're thinking about this. And the other gap I think I spotted was that there's a space for preparing people to be able to apply to philanthropy. So it's capacity building and how to apply that's potentially also needed. But thank you for that. So really useful insights. And also the preparation facility, I think, is perhaps something that is replicable. So thank you for that. I'd now like to hand over to Professor Gabriela Celani. I hope I've got that right, Gabriela, from the University of Campinas in Brazil, who's also got some slides to share, and I think will take us through that. So Gabriela, I think on the role of academia in particular in supporting adaptation and resilience building efforts. So what are some of the latest trends that you're seeing in science and academia and in climate tech in particular? And of course, emphasizing for us the role that academia can play in this space. So Gabriela has some slides. I think we can just ask for those to come up, please. And at this time of day, I think we appreciate having a screen to look at a little bit. Thank you, Gabriela. Over to you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I just don't have my slides on the screen yet. I'm just going to wait for. I would like to show you some images. Yes, okay. So just to give you some context, first of all, I'd like to introduce you to some of my team members. They're right behind me. Thank you so much for, okay. Yeah, it's a bit far, sorry. So these are my colleagues. They're also participating in the COP. And just to give you a sense of context, so this is where Campinas is located. It's very close to São Paulo, and it's in a metropolitan area of 3 million people. We are a university of research, a research university, and we have been consistently ranked among the 3 best universities in Latin America, even though we are not so big, but it's a very strong research university, and we are also the one that has the largest number of patents among all the Brazilian universities. Ours is a public university, it's completely free. And we have some programs for affirmative actions, such as quota for minorities. And we also have a special program for indigenous students from all over Brazil. We also have, this is our innovation agency, which is very strong also. And a few years ago, our university has bought a stretch of land that is inside this, the red area that you see is a technological park founded in the 1990s in Campinas. And so now that we own that area, we're going to spread to occupy it. But the university has asked us, I'm in the School of Architecture and Planning, and they have asked us to come up with some propositions for this area. So we started studying about that, and we ended up founding a new center for studies on knowledge and innovation-based urban development. The name in Portuguese is CEUC because it's the acronym for the same name in Portuguese. And CEUC also stands for, it's also the name of an indigenous entity from the Tupi-Guarani nation. And then we are based, or we are inspired by the quintuple helix innovation model. You all probably heard about the triple helix, on which the science and technology parks were based, which had the government, academia, and the industry together. But now in this quintuple helix, we have also society and the environment as 2 very important partners in order to create wealth, create development. So we came up with this concept of fourth generation knowledge and innovation territories, which is a mix of science parks, innovation districts, sustainable development goals, the new urban agenda, and also our Brazilian context. So basically fourth generation and knowledge and innovation territories can incorporate strong urban and social environmental sustainability guidelines, both in the management of the territory, but also in the business orientation of its organizations. And here are some examples of what we could have. So, for example, 1 month ago, we organized this, the Indigenous Entrepreneurship Workshop. So on the left-hand side, you see one of our students from the Tucan ethnic group. He is doing a deep study about his own language in order to be able to turn that into an automated translation program, which also could, which can probably, hopefully, can be turned into a startup so that he can maybe use that for translating government documents and so forth. On the right-hand side, you have also a picture of some of these indigenous students in an indigenous fashion and biojewelry show, which also can be turned into entrepreneurship. We also have this other program that we're just starting, which is related to food, the food cycle. And we want in this district, we want to connect all the different entities so that we can bring produce from local farmers. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So we can bring food from local farmers, see all the waste, put all the waste together to go to compost and to make fertilizers for the site and so forth. And we also have this small firm startup from these 2 ex-students of ours, 2 girls, and they are specializing in nature-based solutions in order to, and we have this project we're trying to finance now to clean up the water of the river, one of the streams that crosses our land. And finally, this one is the use of digital twins for modeling urban circularity, which is also a small firm startup from a couple of ex-students. And we are also trying to find to help them with financing. And the São Paulo Research Foundation has a special program, which is innovative research in small firms. And they really give money for these young researchers in order to put together academia, research, and these young entrepreneurs. So this is what we've been trying to put together, everybody, so that this can work. Thank you so much.
Gabriela, could I just maybe clarify? So the last slide that you shared is how you bring it together to be able to have that knowledge transfer to young people and to be able to help the growth of smaller entities or enterprises. Yeah.
Yes, not only to bring it together, but also to be able to finance it, because we can help them in preparing all the documents and also doing all the, the bureaucracy that is needed in order to get access to this funding that is available. And not everybody is aware of that.
And that's very important, is how do you actually access all this knowledge that you're incubating fantastically? Okay, thank you. Let me thank my panel, and could I ask a round of applause for them again? Thank you very much. Naira? And I hope we're on time then. And with that, I'd like to then hand over to the next session on what does it make to make an investable project. So I'm going to hand over to Ms. Jane Delsur, who is a principal consultant at BFA Global. Where's Jane? On which side am I? Oh, there we go. Thank you. I can't see you. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for this session. And just for some background, I work running large innovation programs, making investments in climate smart tech startups that improve livelihoods and climate resilience of vulnerable people in sub-Saharan Africa. So you've met one of our companies today, Mazao Hub. Okay, you've heard from the entrepreneurs, their solutions, and speaks to the talent you've heard about policy and how different institutions are creating also opportunities for innovation. And so we turn our attention now to the other critical piece besides talent and enabling policy is the finance, which is also the theme of this COP. And doing this work in innovation, I think it's important to think about, as much as we are trying to invest and accelerate innovation, what's the larger picture in which all of this happens? Because it's either an enabler or a constraint. So we're actually going to go big into and then into more of the micro. And so I'd like to start first with the investor perspective from Almadi Sadi, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Innovix. So, Mr. Sadi, Innovix is a multi-sectoral impact business builder dedicated to addressing global sustainability challenges, and it invests and in scales high-performing technology businesses for climate change and in Morocco. Please tell us more about Innovex. And as an investor, what are you looking for in climate tech startups or projects? What does investable look like for you?
Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. So Innovex is quite it's a disruptive model that we are trying to create in Europe. So just to give you some background of it, so the starting point was a big company called OCP, which is one of the market players in the fertilizer industry. Okay, and then we created a university called UM6P, which is one of the best among African and maybe ranked among the 3 top universities in the world. So with these 2 arms, we're having this industrial arm, and then the knowledge arm, we created Innovex, which is a kind of intersection between how to do business from industrial perspective and how to break through technologies and innovation from a knowledge perspective. So just to give you maybe more down to the floor example, one of our major flagship projects is hydrogen. We are working on hydrogen as a new technology. Everybody knows about green hydrogen. So we are starting with building 1 million ton plant. We are starting with building 1 million ton plant, which is a huge at scale project. It's one of the biggest in the world. And how we did this is we are leveraging on several factors that we created ourselves. First, we are having an off-taker of this product, which is basically the company, which is the mother company, because hydrogen is used for ammonia and ammonia is used for fertilizers. So this is one leverage. So strategically, we started with something we can have leverage on. And when you have an off-taker, you only need something that is very resembling to concessional money. And concessional money is something that we can find easily when you have a well-structured project. So this concessional money is brought either by our branches or by investors. And then for each dollar we are having, another $10 are coming. This is the scale. So basically to wrap it up, what we are doing in this new model is that we are thinking ESG differently. We are thinking ESG through economical lens. Okay, we are just giving ourselves in a stance in the same posture that any other fund, any other investor. What does he look first to? He looks to revenue, so we are bringing revenue. He looks to profitability, we are talking profitability. He looks to technology readiness. We are having a university which is like stating that this technology is mature enough to be scaled up at industrial level. And once we do all of this, I think it's very important to state this. Once we are doing all of this, we figured out that there is a very important component that needs to be plugged, that is synergies. When we are talking about, I heard about the projects in agriculture. I heard about projects in climate change or carbon sequestration. When you are talking about sustainability, you are talking about a connected supply chain. When you want to do agriculture, you cannot do agriculture without water. If you want to have water in Africa, you need energy to desalinate water, for instance. If you want to have energy to desalinate water, you need to have it at a cost which can permit to a farmer to have a yield and then have profitability. So the equation is not a standalone project. So for very much time, you need to take the whole value chain and reformulate the value chain itself. Funding is one component. Of course, it's like vital, it's fueling everything, but it's not everything. Technology is very important, and also the operating model you are bringing into the table is important. And for many times, also how you work with the public sector is very important.
Thank you. And I think it's very comprehensive, and what we see the need for, right? That there's this whole of system, whole of markets approach in order to be able to help startups de-risk, help them think about sustainable business models, or even thinking about scale at the onset. So let's turn our attention then to, we know what it takes to build an investable company, but you also operate in an ecosystem that can be enabling or not. And so let's take a step at looking at the ecosystem perspective and inviting Zarmina Rab, who's the Director of Strategy and Transaction at MEA Sustainability at Ernst & Young. And so let's hear from you what the ecosystem that we operate in is like.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. It is clear that climate tech growth has been exponential. In the last 20 years, for example, we have seen solar going from lab to scale. Clearly, it was enabled by pricing, affordability, as well as scalability, the technology innovation. That was a key component of it. The trends we are seeing today in climate tech solutions, of course, many of them are in renewable energy. We've seen solar, wind, hydro, clean hydrogen has been mentioned as well. But there are also trends in carbon capture storage, energy storage, energy efficiency solutions, circular economy, sustainable agriculture, digital solutions. We're hearing a lot about AI, artificial intelligence, that is now a cross-cutting theme across many of these sectors. So having this in mind, I just want to share some of the research that has been done on the global scale. In 2022, climate tech investment was close to about 40 billion USD. In 2023, global investment was about 70 billion in climate tech solutions. And we're looking in the next 1 to 2 years, that figure will reach about 100 billion annually and growing. So clearly there is an opportunity as well for the global community, entrepreneurs, as well as for the global South, which is why we're all here. It's the Sustainable COP, which is hopefully going to enable that transformation, that transition, to make it a more inclusive energy transition, an inclusive one. How can entrepreneurs prepare themselves for this? Well, we to build that ecosystem or to take advantage of that ecosystem, business models need to be looked at from a financial innovation perspective, from a market innovation perspective, and also from a research perspective. It's really important that entrepreneurs understand their landscape, their local markets, the markets of their customers. It's also very important that these solutions that they are, the product or services that they are working towards are scalable to not only in their local market, but globally, because that makes their proposition very attractive to investors. So having a revenue model, we know, is very important, and measuring that success is very important, because that's what the KPIs and what investors are looking for to mitigate their risk from a risk appetite as well. Building partnerships locally, very important, as well as globally. Now we're seeing, of course, traditionally we have looked at multilateral banks being lenders. We're talking about blended finance, which brings in the private sector philanthropy as well. So those are the emerging partnerships or financial partnerships that are coming in, which will play an important role in the global south, particularly in Africa and in Latin America. And we're hoping that in Brazil, we will hear, on the road to Brazil, we will hear more on that. Mentorship, capacity building, we have heard that before. Other participants, that's very important to have that network, to draw upon that network. Entrepreneurs often don't need to be alone in this journey. If they collaborate with others and draw upon networks and get mentored, it becomes easier for them to navigate the landscape. And again, regulatory alignment. They have to be very cognizant of what the regulatory changes are taking place or incentives that are being given to them in their market. Incentives that include grants, subsidies, whatever that may be in that particular market. We at EY recently at New York Climate Week launched a climate tech ecosystem solution to support entrepreneurs. It's regionalized. So in MENA, for example, we have a climate tech solution that supports SMEs as well as scale-ups. We offer services that are needed from taxation, looking at regimes, regulatory support, as well as funding, and what are the options, what are the opportunities for them to tap into, as well as for scale-ups, so SMEs and scale-ups. And we're hoping that we will get a lot of traction in that space in the regions where it's really needed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarmina. That last note is a good segue for us to turn to some of the barriers. We know that there are a lot of challenges for innovation and for startups to achieve that investable project. And so let's hear from Farhad Pashayev, who's the development director of Sabah Hub, an innovation center here in Azerbaijan that's dedicated to fostering startups through incubation, acceleration, and venture funding. Please tell us about the hub and how are you helping climate tech startups, especially in developing countries? How do they address these barriers?
Thank you, Jane, for the question, and thank you to everyone else for sharing their insights. It's been very helpful for me as well. So just a bit of a background about what we do. Sabah Hub is a horizontally integrated innovation ecosystem player on a regional level, where we try to nurture the new generation of innovators, basically, in Azerbaijan, as well as the broader South Caucasus and Central Asian region. We run educational programs, including an innovation-focused international school, incubation and acceleration centers, and a VC fund. So we're in a unique position to understand the challenges that sustainable and clean innovation is met with in developing economies. We run several climate tech cohorts a year, giving us first-hand experience with these challenges. So, of course, the list is very long, and I don't think that we have enough time to go through all of it. But I wanted to focus on the three main challenges that we've been able to identify and share some of the solutions that have been that we've seen helpful, at least towards those challenges. Of course, we're not reinventing the wheel here, but as I said, these solutions have shown very positive results for us. One of the most significant hurdles, as everyone here knows and has been mentioned several times, is the lack of funding directed at climate tech startups, particularly, in our opinion, from the corporate sector. And this is the first point that I wanted to talk about. It's the activation of the corporate sector. While global climate investments have surpassed 1 trillion annually, only a small fraction of this comes from corporations operating in emerging markets. This gap is alarming, especially when large corporations often hold the resources and the networks needed to drive transformational change in developing countries. This, however, is also an opportunity, as we found out. Corporates must step up not just as investors, but as partners in innovation as well. We've had success with companies such as Sokar, which is the state-owned energy and oil company in Azerbaijan, where they've sponsored and also invested into our VC fund with very excellent results so far. One of those was the Sustainable Innovation Challenge, which was hosted at COP in the Green Zone today, where our fund has committed to invest into clean tech startups presenting of over 1 million in US dollars. On a global scale, of course, this is not a big sum, but this is quite significant for the region. So imagine if every corporation operating in emerging markets committed just 1% to their annual profits in climate tech innovation. This would unlock hundreds of millions, if not billions, of investments to clean tech startups. The next challenge that we've been able to find solutions to is how to find synergies between the public and private sector. Developing countries often lack resources to build the infrastructure required for climate tech to thrive, and we see that in this region as well. This is where public-private partnerships can play a transformative role. And I want to share a couple of examples with you. One of them is India's Renewable Energy Development Agency, which through PPPs has mobilized over 2 billion for green infrastructure projects. Another example that is a lot closer to home is a project called Sabah City, which is a sustainability-focused technology park and part of Azerbaijan's Start Smart initiative, which we're building together with the government as well as the corporate sector here in Baku, unlocking resources and tools for innovators so hungry to fix the future for themselves and the next generations. This doesn't only unlock infrastructure support, but also funding, of course. Government and developing markets need to incentivize private sector participation by creating stable regulatory frameworks, offering tax benefits and de-risking investments, which is something that we see starting as a trend, but definitely needs to improve in the near future. In turn, the private sector can bring in capital expertise and operational efficiencies, something that the governments aren't always good at. Together, is the way that they can create this foundation upon which climate tech can grow even further. And one of the, let's say, barriers or challenges that we never saw coming, which was a big surprise, but it was one of the biggest one for us, is the fact that there's a big lack of early adopters. And there's not enough sandboxes for experimentation in the region. And it's not just the region. I believe this is very common between all emerging economies. In developing countries, startups face the inability to experiment and validate their ideas. For instance, despite the potential of solar microgrids in rural areas, adoption remains slow because of local communities may be hesitant to invest into these untested solutions. And governments are also often unwilling to take initial risks. So to overcome these challenges, we've been able to convince our local governments to start targeted pilot programs supported by subsidies and grants. These aren't always effective, but this is kind of the startup way. You have to experiment to see what works and then double down on the things that work. This doesn't only allow us to validate ideas, but also build confidence in the market for broader adoption. This, however, wasn't the only solution that we've been able to find for this barrier. Another one that is a lot easier, so to say, is regional integration. So by partnering with ecosystems from neighboring countries, we've been able to unlock access to new markets and new sandboxes where sometimes, or a lot of the times, the problems are shared, but the mindset can be different. So ideas from one market could be a lot easily adapted in a neighboring country. Again, these challenges may seem daunting, but they're not insurmountable. Corporations, governments, R&D facilities, and innovation hubs must act together. And this is something that is up to not just one of the components, but all of these have to really come together in a unified front. By channeling resources into the right areas, fostering partnerships, and creating platforms for collaboration, we can ensure that climate tech in developing countries doesn't just survive, but it thrives. I hope that by me sharing these experiences that we've had, you've been able to gain some insights and take them back to your own countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Farhad. And so maybe just taking a moment to reflect on what we've been hearing about what's enabling funding. We recognize that there's the need to think about scalable projects, leveraging the potential by thinking about the pieces of the value chain, a much more leveraging the value chain, leveraging synergies so that you can create businesses, models at scale. We've also heard about the lack of funding from corporate sector. How might we leverage that further so that we can drive transformation? I think we tend to look primarily to investors and overlook that potential. And we also need to think about the tailwinds that startups can leverage to help their growth, to fuel their growth. So what trends in the sector are growing? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you leverage things like regional integration that can give you much more market? This is something that's really exciting that's happening with the AFCFTA, for example, not without its challenges. So then we come to the entrepreneur who has to navigate all of this, who has to figure out how to build the plane while flying it. And so we turn our attention to Ms. Patricia Nzolantima, who's the BO of Brazili Holdings. And as a serial entrepreneur yourself and someone that advises founders and probably, provides a lot of empathy, it's a difficult thing for founders and startups. How do you help entrepreneurs, especially women, to respond to the environment? And what advice do you have for entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Jen. My name is Patricia. I'm from Congo, basing in Dubai. I want to focus a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. Yeah. All right. And so 8 years ago, I launched a taxi cab with a woman driver. I want to focus on the case study to respond to your question. When we launching the taxi cab, I was owning all the taxi, and woman was the driver. And then with all the climate change, I decided to set a goal, what was 1 million women in mobility for 2030. But this was a little bit complicated. Why? Because we know, most of us, we know it's not easy for women like a middle class and even average class to have access to the funding and get their own cabs. So this was one of the challenge. The first challenge was how can I fund a woman to have more women in the mobility? And the second one was most of them, they don't drive. So I needed to create building capacity so that I can then help them to own their own cab, finance on their own cab. And this is where we are right now. So, and then we launched the taxi, what was one of the success story in Africa. We training, then we open driving school. But why? Because most of the woman driver has been recruited at the university, because we know the level of employment when most of them finish the university. So we went to the university to recruit women as a driver. But because they don't own any cabs and they never drive in their life, so we decided to open with the U.S. Embassy and the USAID, the first women driver school in the DRC. What we did, and we're training more than 5,000 women as a driver. And I want to just make a little bit comment. Actually, most of the UN agency in the DRC, all the women driver, they came from a women driver school. And then from there, I owning almost 500 cabs. And then we decided to transform those women as a woman, as an owner of the company. Why? Because they was owning $300. And we realized that if we give them their own cabs, they can become entrepreneur. But to become entrepreneur, firstly, we needed to help them to open a small company. What we did, and then the last challenge was how can we finance those women, because bank will not want to be involved on that. And then I decided to launch my own fund. And when I started the taxi, I was saying we need to own our own bank, a women bank, so that the bank will be able to finance all the women in mobility if I want to reach my goal. And this is what I call building resilience, because it was not easy. None of any bank accepted to finance, because I remember at the beginning that was saying, are you sure that is going to work? Because we don't, and firstly, seeing a woman as a driver, women own this, I would say middle class or B2B, they own their own cars, but average people, they don't own the car, they don't know even how to afford it. And I say, okay, it's gonna be my challenge. And because I already building some of the company, so I use our own funds to launch the fund in mobility for women. And today we have investing in more than 1,000 women. We training more than 10,000 women as a driver. We become a recruitment, how do you, resourcing company for most of the UN and NGO for as a woman driver. And so the last step right now is a set up the biggest fund in the mobility for women, but also scale the business, not just in the DRC, because now we did a success story in DRC, but we go in East Africa. So we're starting by Kenya in March, Mombasa and Nairobi, where we no longer own any caps, but just funding women. This case study really made us realize the issue that women face when it's coming for funding. I think most investors, they know that, and specifically in Africa. And I love to say, if we don't fund those women, specifically as SME and mobility, we will never reach the target of climate change. And why? Because for us to be able to own the electric cab, we needed now to partnership with a mobility solution infrastructure company to set up some charging station. This is what we did. We signed a partnership with Shell in Kenya. We work with a company, Viva Energy, and with DRC with Engine, so that we can be able to set up the charging station. All of this to say that building a resilience for women need funding and capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that story. And what I noticed is that there's a nice mirroring between the first two examples, the example we heard from you, Mr. Sadi, of how you've also thought through parts of the system in a way, almost doing a vertical integration and building a system around the women. It's also remarkable. You started with the 1 million target and you built from there. So congratulations. I want to thank the panelists for joining me today. And I'd like to welcome closing remarks from Dora Nsua Kujo, who's the lead for governance and stakeholder engagement at CIF. Thank you.
Let me start by duly thanking you all for putting together such an innovative conversation involving entrepreneurship in the, should I say, in the continent. This has been very informative and really much appreciated. As a quick backgrounder to my remarks, I'd like to, of course, give this information of working with the climate investment funds. The climate investment funds, one of the largest multilateral funds globally, was established in 2008 and has successfully piloted and scaled investments in cutting-edge solutions addressing frontier climate challenges in collaboration with our implementing multilateral development banks. We work with these banks, let me know, to tackle themes and work in countries that are challenging to work with on their own. Let me quickly make note that with of the 12 billion, both in pledges and contributions, we are supporting over 360 operations in some 80 plus low and middle income countries. And we are helping our multilateral development banks really push the barriers on innovative solutions, entering complex and risky areas, tackling the greatest challenges of our time, which is climate crisis. And of course, from today's discussions, makes a clear importance of the need for small to medium scale enterprises in addressing the challenge. It makes it quite clear why there's the need for focus on that. And it's important to note that SMEs play that vital role in building systemic resilience, particularly at the community level. It's important to know that SMEs as around this table create jobs, reduce poverty, and also help accelerate economic growth, representing just about 90% of businesses and providing employment to over 50% worldwide. That's quite remarkable. And in the sub-Saharan African region alone, there are over 44 million such SMEs, which are all considered micro enterprises. But unfortunately, these innovators face many barriers to operationalize profitable businesses, just as we've heard around the table. And on top of that, we know that SMEs would like to take more active role in ensuring sustainability and minimizing climate impact, but they do not always receive the resources. So listening to Madame, I couldn't help but appreciate the need, as you said, for funding and for that capacity to open doors for scaling up. And this is why the climate investment funds comes in, that concessional financing is so critically needed to develop and test new technologies, leading to breakthroughs in adaptation measures, energy efficiency, and sustainable practices that will benefit our SMEs. From the climate investment funds, I'll give one very niche example that we work diligently to enable innovation and pioneering approaches on climate action. For example, one of our key programs, which is called the Pilot Program for Climate Resilience, is particularly focused on bolstering resilient communities in both medium and small scale enterprises. And some specific examples here in Bangladesh, Nepal, Tajikistan, Niger, and the Caribbean, we ensure that efforts are tailored to the needs of the country. And we work so hard in ensuring that efforts looking closely at establishing market ecosystem of key businesses and engaging stakeholders like local equipment suppliers, smallholder farmers, agri-distributors, local maintenance and training providers, and in one instance, even borehole drilling companies. We are systematically addressing barriers through technical assistance, through intermediate financing, and providing risk coverage through innovative financing models. Of course, let me note here that inventive and inclusive projects like those we're speaking about illustrate that the role of SMEs play in accelerating investments and the huge potential for PPP models. They're not that's not the end of the story, however. While we strengthen the resolve of today's SME leaders and innovators, we are also investing in the next generation leadership. And two quick examples, we are partnering with the Adaptation Fund, particularly with the Global Center on Adaptation, providing funding to innovative investment opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities across the continent. And also we are working very closely with a particular program called the Youth Adapt, where we are supporting agribusinesses, we're supporting looking at much more circular economy type inventions. And very recently, I'm sure a few of you may have heard that Climate Investment Funds launched what we're calling a youth fellowship program that is giving select youth opportunity to work with our multilateral development banks in unearthing the understanding of climate finance, opening the spaces for capacity enablement, and giving them a delve into what this whole space of multilateral climate financing mean. The challenge's primary objective is to enhance sustainable job creation by supporting entrepreneurship and youth-driven innovation. Let me wrap up by saying that in conclusion, with collaboration and innovation, we collectively around the table can drive meaningful climate action and social change. And it will be a pleasure for the Climate Investment Funds to continue to be a partner in such meaningful conversations. So thank you again for the invitation, and it's been a delight listening in and contributing our parts to this very, very forward-looking conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very nice.